I'm so excited to be here. Abby Wambach is here. She's waiting in the wings. For those that haven't met me before, my name is Janelle Sallenave, and I run the Uber Eats business for the US and Canada. And I jumped the front of the line when they said, hey, who wants to talk with Abby? And I'm like, me! I will fly from anywhere to be here. So hopefully you're as excited as I am to get to meet her. I hear a few bits of excitement. So let me introduce her, and then let's bring her up, and then let's have a chat. So in the unlikely event that you don't know who Abby is, let's introduce her. And I thought, why don't we just see how she introduces herself? So this is how she describes herself from her latest book. She is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, a FIFA World Cup champion, the highest all-time international goal scorer for male and female soccer players. She's an activist for equality and inclusion and the New York Times best-selling author of Forward. By the way, if you haven't read, I'd encourage you to read. She is the co-founder of Wolfpack Endeavors, which is revolutionizing leadership development for women in the workplace and beyond. She lives in Florida with her 3 children. Please join me welcoming Abby.
Hey, hey.
Hello again.
How are you?
Oh, sorry.
Hello. What's going on? Can you guys hear me? Yeah. So
Bit of a girl moment there.
Yeah, well, your hair got in my way. This is why I have the hair that I have.
That's actually what happened. How did I not notice your shoes until right now? We were chit-chatting before.
I was behind a table.
Those are quite something.
Thank you. Well, with children, these are actually the first pair of nice shoes that I've purchased since getting married a couple years ago. Before the book launch for Wolfpack, I asked my wife, I was like, I think it's time for a new pair of shoes. And when you get married and you inherit 3 human beings that you have to put through college, the desire to purchase anything extra goes away. So this was a huge gift to myself. Yeah, my wife was happy to do it, to agree to it, yeah.
I have to tell you before we dive in that you are the first Olympic medalist that I've ever met. Pretty damn cool.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mission accomplished. So I just have to ask for my own personal satisfaction, but like in my head, is there like a room in your house where you put up all your trophies? Do you wear the medals every now and then? Like, where are they?
Yeah, so my all of my medals, including the golds, are in my sock drawer.
No, really?
Yeah, well, here's the reason. Number one, I'm not like a person that is gonna put up stuff. Like my wife just lobbied to get one of my old retired jerseys put up on the wall up in our game room for where our kids hang out. And that took her 2 years because I was like, I don't know, it feels kind of weird to like walk into a room and be like, Wambach, you know? And then, so like to create like a place and to shrine my career, I don't know, it just feels a little bit like too soon.
Yeah.
And also it's possible that somebody will come and steal that shit.
Yeah, that's true.
So you just like hide them away.
You just told all of us.
I know, but are they really in the sock drawer?
Oh man, this has been a very unfulfilling moment for me. I don't even know if it's true.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about Sunday? Like,
Yes.
That was so amazing. I wonder what it was like for you. You weren't there, right?
I was not there. Yeah. I was at home.
Were you like yelling at the TV?
Yeah.
What is it like to watch and not get to be part of it now?
So it's super stressful. You know, I think I went to a couple of the games. So I was in there when they played, who the heck did they play? Sweden. And that was a really fun game to watch. But it was the last game of the group stage. So it wasn't like they didn't, in fact, if they lost the game, it would have given them an easier road to the eventual final. So there was a part of me that was like, maybe it would be smart to lose this game, but it's still so stressful. Like when you're watching them, and I know these players, and I know how much went into the prep of the specific tournament. Watching the final, however, it felt a little bit different because, you know, playing France and then England, those games I was so stressed about because it very could have easily turned in the other direction.
Absolutely.
I mean, if it weren't for VAR calling back a few of those England goals, giving us penalty shots. Like, there's a lot that goes into it, and luck is for sure one of them. Do I think that our women's team deserved to win this tournament? Absolutely. So it was like super stressful. I'm so proud of them. And, you know, for them to be able to kind of transition this championship into not just like a movement, but a movement for things that all of them collectively are passionate about. Mm-hmm. I mean, Megan Rapinoe, are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, she got, throughout the tournament, like, you're actually still playing in the tournament. She got into a Twitter fight with the president and won. You know, like, not many people can say that. Like, I got into a fight with the president of our country and actually won. So, and regardless of where you land on the political scheme or the scale, I think that what these women represent, you know, I ask myself this a lot, like, why are people so engaged during the World Cups, during the Olympics? Why are people so amazed and become this movement, this fandom just shows up? And it's because that the culture of our women's national team is a team that has always been railing against status quo. Yep. It's a team that's always been trying to fight for more, for this whole idea of equality, right? And they're shaping and framing this conversation for the rest of the world, right? So a win for our women's team is essentially a win for women everywhere. And this fight, this journey towards equality, I know that it might take a little bit longer, but this women's team is like the litmus test of what's possible. So when we watch them, it's like we're watching this freedom, this possibility of a better life, of a better future. And it's just so fun to watch them do it and to watch them celebrate and to watch them unapologetically go about this championship has been one of the highlights of it for me, you know, seeing them show up and, you know, just bare themselves to the world and say, hey, we're demanding your attention right now. And it's been really special.
That's awesome.
So that was a long answer. I don't even know what the question was.
Doesn't matter.
Did I answer it?
You did.
Awesome.
I almost remember what I asked. What I want to talk a little bit about this book. And I don't know if everyone's read it yet. Get on it, people. Just read the book.
It'll take you 1 hour. So yep. I know all of our attention spans are shorter now. Yep. This is a book to feed that problem. That's
right. You can read it in 5-minute increments, I would say. So if you had to write the dictionary definition, right, the 1 or 2 sentences, can you just define what a Wolfpack is so we're all oriented for this?
Yeah, so, you know, part of my experience playing on the national team is when I retired, people ask me, like, do you miss playing? And I'm like, hell no. I miss my teammates. Yeah. And the reason why I miss my teammates so much is, like, you know, we got to travel the world and that was fun to be able to do together. But when you are in a group of people that are mission driven, and there's this other kind of purpose, this bigger idea of what we're fighting for, and you're all collectively doing the same thing day in and day out, and you have accountability partners and you have people who are pushing you, and you're competing together for this idea, for this better future, for something greater than yourself. There's something that's really important about that. And so the whole premise of this book, and the reason why I wanted to write that is everybody has access to creating their own specific personal Wolfpack, whether it's here at Uber, whether it's at home, whether it's being invested or getting dialed in your community and trying to fix some of the problems that you're experiencing, or that, you know, getting in the PTAs with, you know, you guys actually all seem super young here, so maybe hold off on the PTA talk. I was at like a much older company last week, so excuse me. But I think that, you know, this book is my attempt to try to give people an understanding of what it takes to be a part of a group of people that really does want to make positive change. Mm-hmm. And it takes time to create. It takes time to build a culture that is worthy of people's desires and people's sacrifice, right? Like, you know, I know you guys are a fairly new company in the grand scheme of things, and you're still in the development of what you want Uber to be. And you're always going to be developing that, but you have to have some non-negotiables, right? And so this book is my attempt to try to simplify some of the things that really did strike me as part of the reason why our women's national team had so much success. Yep. The railing against status quo, the ideas, and in the beginning of the book, in fact, I know there's like a lot of guys here. This is not a book just that's written for women. This is the leadership principles in this book are universal. And so the first page in this book, the note to the reader, I invite men into this idea of reading a book through the perspective of a woman and trying to impart themselves in that. Think about how many books that have been written in the world. Far more books have been written by men than women. And all of us women have been trying to find ourselves in works, in art, in business that has been created by men and for men. So this is an opportunity for men, and I'm inviting men into this conversation because in order to actually achieve real equality, men have to be a part of the conversation and a part of the solution and the answer.
Yep. Awesome. So to me, what I took away was that a Wolfpack really is a group, and being part of a group that is united by a purpose that's sort of bigger than any one individual.
Yeah.
And that one of the awesome things for me being in a Wolfpack is that group is behind me, right? They're helping sort of champion and stand me up, and I'm helping everyone else sort of stand up. And so I was really struck by this woman that wrote you a note in the book, and I'm gonna read your book back to you. Bear with me. But this was a note that a woman sent to you, and you shared it in the book. And so she wrote, "My entire life, I've been the only woman in the room, the only woman at the table. I've raised my daughters without a village. Being a woman is a special kind of lonely. We are siloed into our little spaces, isolated from each other. Men have the old boys club. We need one. I want a Wolfpack for me too."
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so damn powerful. And so my question to you is, because I feel very blessed, I've found a couple of Wolfpacks in my life, and they make me so much stronger. But for somebody who might be listening to us talk, who hasn't had that experience yet, what would you say to somebody about how? How do you find your Wolfpack? How do you go and do that? How did you do that when you left soccer? You had to make a new Wolfpack.
Yeah, I think that's the big question, right? I think that the practicality and the information that I write about in this book is one thing. And I didn't want to create or put into this book like a how to create a Wolfpack, because first of all, everybody's life and experience is so different. Yes. And also, when I was writing this book, I am like still in the process of figuring that out myself.
But I must say, your new Wolfpack seems to include Serena Williams, Elizabeth Gilbert, Amy Schumer. I mean,
yeah,
that's good.
Listen, I realize that I sit in a privileged position, and I realize that my work playing soccer and the body of my work as a pro athlete gives me access to certain rooms that not everybody has access to. But I do believe that, we all have to understand first and foremost what we know to be true. Mm-hmm. My wife says this really cool thing. A lot of people ask themselves, like, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here, right? Okay. And her belief system is that if you figure out what breaks your heart, like when you read the news and you figure out, oh, that really is terrible, whether it be, the separated families at the border right now, or whatever it is, whatever your issue is, then you start putting your mind and your body into action and trying solving those things, right? Because essentially what you can do is you can turn your heartbreak into action. And a lot of people call that philanthropy, right? And when you start to actually put your body into action to solve some of these problems that break your heart, and you look around, then you find your people, right? So that's where you can help yourself in finding your purpose, finding your people, and creating this idea, this belief system around, we don't do things singularly. There is not one person on planet Earth that has ever succeeded without the help of somebody else. Yep. And I know that that's almost cliche, but we're not doing this life by ourselves so that we can stand at the top of the mountain going, I won. I've been there. I've won gold medals. I've won championships. And, and when I think about how those championships came to be, it was because of all of us. It was because we all collectively bought into this idea something that was bigger than us so that we had a drive, a purpose, right? And it's not easy, by the way. Like, you know, creating, you can have a Wolfpack, you can create an organization internally here at Uber. But if you don't set guidelines for what that is, for what your non-negotiables are, like what are we going to be here? You have to figure out what it is you want to be. And in order to do that, you have to first like dial it back and figure out what it is that you are now. You know, like I think that even at 39 years old now, I have to constantly check myself and do work on what do I know to be true. We were talking about this backstage. You know, with social media and like the excessive amount of information always coming in on the minute by minute basis, that's affecting our collective consciousness.
Yes.
And we have to be very vigilant, not just for ourselves, but our families and our Wolfpacks, whatever, our jobs, our companies. We have to be very vigilant about what information we're actually listening to, because all of that stuff is literally collectively going into our systems. You know, I was reading this article the other day about how the algorithms like create the information on which ads. Like, do you sometimes like have conversation with somebody that you're sitting next to, and then all of a sudden you look at your phone and you're scrolling through your social media sites, and the ads are what you were just talking about. So you think that they're listening to you, but actually they're not. What they're doing is they're collectively generating all of your locations. You guys are all computer people, right? So you know all this, but they're collectively generating all of the places that you are, and they literally know what you're looking at. So they can attempt at least to figure out what it is you're thinking. So what do you know? Like how do I know that my thoughts are my thoughts now? And no, seriously, it's scary as hell.
That's true. Yeah.
That's why you have to do the work and make sure that you are figuring out what it is that you, in fact, know. Like, what do you believe in? And what kind of political system do you want? Like, what are the dreams that you want? And you have to figure that out before you actually can figure out what kind of an organization you want to be part of or what your purpose here is. You have to do the work first before you actually start creating the systems around it, because otherwise the systems are going to be tainted. The institutions that you build or the programs or the organizations that you build are going to be tainted if you don't know what it is that you believe to be true, and then draw a line and figure out how it is you came to know that truth. Because all of us were born and raised in different places. We all have sexism. We all have racism. We all have all the shit that we were born with. We've got it. It's instilled in us from the time that we are born. It's not our fault, but it is our responsibility to figure out, oh, okay, so I understand how I came to know that, and now I got to do the work to undo it. I got to do the work to undo this bias that I have been holding on to for whatever reason, whether it's right or wrong is irrelevant. So what was the question?
But part of
I go.
part of what I think you're really getting at is like, it is the hard work, but until you find your truth, to use your words, like until you find what you're really passionate about, what you really believe to be, or you were saying also, I think you said like what makes your heart break, right?
Yeah.
Like what really connects you. You're sort of almost like wandering around.
You're flailing.
Yeah, exactly.
You're flailing.
Sort of wandering around. You wrote about sort of this like big aha moment that you had, which I think sort of was for you a bit about finding your truth. So maybe.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh, you're going to read about it?
Yes.
Fun.
Focusing our conversation, because otherwise, okay. So this is what you wrote. You were talking about sort of realizing. You said, I'm angry. You actually used that word. And by the way, it's a very powerful word, right? That's a real truth, big moment, breakthrough. And you were feeling angry because you realized that you were feeling a great sense of injustice, that you sort of hadn't gotten what you thought you deserved. And you wrote, I was just feeling grateful. I was so grateful for a paycheck. I was so grateful to represent my country. I was so grateful to be the token woman at the table, so grateful to receive any respect at all, that I was afraid to use my voice to demand more for myself and equality for all. Like, that's a pretty darn big breakthrough moment. And you write in the book that what you want the new rule to be, what you want all of us to take in, is this idea that being grateful, by the way, is a wonderful thing. You're not telling any of us to stop being grateful. And I think actually being grateful for the work we get to do is a real sign that we have found to do something that we love. Mm-hmm. But it's about being grateful and, mm-hmm. right, demanding what you deserve. So what does that look like? Because I think for some of us, we could read that and say, sure, okay, I like that idea, but like, what do I do, right?
Yeah.
Do I elbow into the room and say,
Yeah.
I deserve a raise, I deserve to win? Like, how do you
Let me give a little bit more context. So I was on stage standing next to Kobe Bryant and Peyton Manning. That's what this specific story was about. You guys know those guys? Yeah. So while all three of us were receiving this Icon ESPY award, all three of us were retiring and we were getting honored for the body of all of our work. I just felt like, wow, here we are. Like, we women, we finally made it, right?
Here. Yeah.
We've gotten on the same stage. We're getting the same awards. We're getting recognized. And then the camera turned off and all three of us walked off stage. And what I realized is that all three of us were walking into three very different retirements, right? These guys, their biggest worry was trying to figure out how they were going to invest their collective hundreds of millions of dollars that they just earned. And I had to figure out how I was going to create a new career so that I could pay my mortgage. True story. And I think that moment for me, it was a slap in the face. Mm-hmm. And that night when I laid in bed, I dedicated myself, because my heart was broken, to make sure that the next person who was in a position that I was in, Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, they would not have the same moment of walking off that stage in their retirement, fearing what the heck am I going to do next, right? And I think that what I realized is, oh, I didn't do enough when I was in it. Because when you're in it, you're feared into saying less. How many women in this room have been the only woman in a business position in a room? How many women? How many women have not spoken up in this room when they wanted to? Yeah, a lot of us, right? And I think that our gratitude sometimes inhibits our ability to get what we need. Our gratitude perpetuates the institutional sexism and misogyny. Our silence is so importantly deafening. When we say nothing, we get nothing. And look, I'm not here to say, look, we need to start fires everywhere we go, because I believe that negotiation and communication is the most important thing. But when you have no space to actually use your voice, when you have no platform or no experience in using your voice, it's difficult. Mm-hmm. So, my job now is to collectively go around the world and say, women, speak up. And it's going to be uncomfortable at first. And I'm sorry about that. But the thing that always brings me a little bit of peace around that is when I say speak up and I actually speak up, I'm going to make it a little bit easier for that next woman who steps in a very similar moment with the same people, and her speaking up is going to go a little bit better. And then the next woman, and then the next woman. And I'm not saying that we're going to get through and become equal tomorrow. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I know that it's going to take time, but it has to start somewhere. And then also, too, you don't have to start fires everywhere you go. The way in which we talk to each other matters, mm-hmm. right? Sometimes you need to meet aggression with aggression, absolutely. When you're met with violence, sometimes you have to meet that with the same kind of force and energy. But I think that the way in which we approach certain situations, I have a lot of male friends. I have a lot of male colleagues. Sometimes I have to say, hey, look, like, I know that you probably didn't mean that to be offensive, but here's what just happened. And just replaying the situation. And like, maybe look at that from my perspective next time. Or sometimes, and this is a true story, I was texting with my agent a couple months back, and he started talking about this professor that I was going to have a meeting with. And I said, oh, what's his name? And he wrote back like, actually, it's a woman, you jerk. And I'm like, you're right. I am infected too. I'm literally the person that's going around the world right now talking about this. And I get mixed up in it too, because it's so deeply ingrained in all of us.
It's so unbiased, right?
Right.
You didn't realize you're doing it.
Exactly. And I think that we have to understand that even though I'm the person that's going out in the world and trying to bring light to this specific issue and bring more equality to all businesses and all places where decisions are made, I mean, everywhere, really, we're all people. And we have to be able to give each other a little bit of space to make mistakes. I think that now in our political world and social media, we're just killing each other for saying the wrong thing, for misspeaking, for making a mistake. And I just don't think that that's the way to the promised land of real equality. I think that we have to be a little bit more patient and mindful and approach situations with more curiosity instead of judgment.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to necessarily, I know that there are certain situations that that's not okay. You have to actually approach it with a little bit more aggression. But for the most part, I think generally everybody is trying to do the best that they can.
I was thinking a little bit when I was reading that part of the book about, it's, by the way, it's hard for me at least, and probably for you all too, when you read the book, you find yourself saying, oh, do I behave that way? Oh, am I standing up for myself? Right?
Yeah, good. That's the whole point.
Oh, good. Well,
Yeah.
it works.
That's the whole point.
So I was thinking about it, and sure, I think I could do better, but I was thinking like, yeah, I bring my voice. But then I was remembering, it wasn't like I came out of the womb that way, right? It wasn't when I first finished school and started a job, like I didn't start that way. I used to like sweat for like an hour before I get to go with my boss to a meeting, thinking of like, what's the one question I'm going to already have ready so that way I can like find a way to talk. I mean, I had a very weak muscle at that. And I think standing up for yourself and demanding what you deserve is a skill and a muscle. And you're challenging us to say, start practicing that, right?
Totally.
Get on that, because
You're going to suck at first. Truthfully, I mean, it's gonna go bad, and you're gonna probably say maybe the wrong thing, or you're gonna embarrass yourself.
Yep.
But you have to keep pushing yourself and putting yourself in those positions. You know, we all are terrible at doing things for the first time, and this is a muscle. And you know, for the men in the room, you might think, well, I've been practicing this muscle too, and you know, this standard that that gets set, there's a double standard here. The truth is that men are allowed to have more space in a room to talk. And what muscle men can actually start training is this idea and this context of listening more. Truthfully, I have had a platform playing on the biggest stage for many years. So I am a talker. My biggest problem right now that I'm working on is actually listening. And it's so hard when you've been given the room, and oftentimes I am, that I'm literally paid to come and speak. My biggest struggle right now is to listen. And so, you know, I would challenge the men in this room and some of the women who might talk too much to listen more, because no, seriously, because you will find out, you will actually learn about other people. Even if, you know, one of the biggest things that I'm listening or trying to do right now, you know, when I have a better idea to add into a conversation, my challenge to myself right now is to not say the idea.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
So I'm also a big talker. And one thing someone said to me once is like, Janelle, why don't you ask things as questions, right? To like engage in the whole conversation. Anyways, random thing. But I'm going
to add that to I'm going to add questions.
That helps. I don't know. That's what they told me to try to do. And I thought, anyway, I thought it was a good idea.
How does that work?
I'm still working
See
on it.
what I did there?
Just fast. You're talking a little bit about the idea that changing our behaviors and sort of changing the environment in which we operate is not like going to happen overnight, right? We're not having this wonderful conversation. We're all going to walk out of the room and magically, because we think differently, the whole world is going to behave differently. Like, we have to understand that we're going to have some moments of failure, basically. And actually, it struck me in reading the book that failure is actually a pretty big and important theme. And we don't talk about that. We view failure as failure, and who wants to talk about failing? But in fact, you're challenging us to think about it. And you wrote something that I thought was incredibly powerful. Women haven't yet accessed the power of failure. When it comes, right, when failure comes, we panic, we deny it, or we reject it outright. Worst case scenario, we view failure as proof that we were always unworthy imposters. Men have been allowed to fail and keep playing forever. Why do we let failure take us out of the game? And I read that and I was like, oh man, that is like 3 years of my therapy in like one paragraph. Yes, exactly. Like, what am I always afraid of?
Yeah.
And I connected it to something that, I don't know if you know about this study about sort of women and applying for jobs. Are you familiar with this?
Keep going.
So there was a study. So whenever, you look at a job, there's always a section that sort of lists the qualifications, right? Maybe 6 or 7 things that you need to qualify. And what the study found is that you take women and men that are equally qualified, and the woman will look, on average, the woman will look at that job and say, oh, shoot, I only have some of the requirements, and not apply.
Oh, right.
And the men will look at it and be like, I got some, why not, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of this cultural, almost unconscious thing we've all been raised with, which is like, as a woman, I got to be really, really damn sure, right, before I sort of put myself out there. And so what are sort of your thoughts about how we start breaking that internal, sometimes unconscious monologue we have with ourselves of like, I'm not sure I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm really good enough.
Yeah.
How do you start changing that thinking?
Well, first of all, I think that it's important to diagnose the reasons why this exists first, right? Because, it's like a math problem. If there's a table right here and there's 10 seats at the table and 2 of those seats are statistically been given to women, it makes sense why women might feel a little bit less like taking a risk because I only have 2 seats at that table, right? And so the chances of me getting there are less. And then also what that does is it pits us against each other.
Right.
So we're competing for these 2 seats against each other rather than saying, oh no, I actually want to figure out how to gain more access to those 3 other seats that should be dedicated to women. So we have to understand that we have been built and we've been cultivating our consciousness and the thoughts and the belief systems that we have about ourselves through the collective ideas of the corporate world, essentially, because corporations create products, those products go out into the world, and then we actually start to ingest and understand the world through the ways of society, right? And so I think that when we really try to figure out this idea of failure, it makes such sense why we're so anxious about it, why women are more anxious about it than men, because men have been put in the business world and they've been a part of the business world longer than women have.
There's space for them.
So they have more chance at failing. So it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, in the sports analogy world, it's like a coach is standing in front of a group of women in a locker room, and the coach says, one of you I'm super disappointed in one of you, right? And that same coach will sit in a locker room full of men and say, I'm really disappointed in one of you. You really didn't do your job today. And in the women's locker room, the girls all think that the coach is talking to them. And in the boys' locker room, men's locker room, the guys all think that the coach is talking about that guy. And this isn't...
We laugh, but it's true.
No, yeah, and this isn't because biologically or physiologically we're different people, we're different species. This is because of culturally and socially we have been developed to believe, this is what I'm allowed to do. This is a space that I'm allowed to make mistakes. Yeah. So, I mean, even in the financial world, like in the business world, women are less likely and less prone to take bigger risks because there's fewer chance of being able to do that. You're going to either get demoted or get fired or whatever, because we only have 2 women, so our 2 women at this table have to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And it's just scarcity mentality. It's been implanted in all of us. So we have to check ourselves. And, I don't have an answer for it. I just think that we have to support each other. I think that the men in this room have to support women to taking risks. The women in the room have to support other women to take risks. And then when failures happen, you have to actually change the mindset that you have around failure. Yeah. Failure is just information. I mean, from the time that I was a little kid, I was like practicing with my left foot, practicing. I sucked. I was terrible. I couldn't figure it out. And then eventually, I got a little bit better at it. And though, Malcolm Gladwell and his 10,000 hour rule thing, eventually you'll get better at doing something. And that doesn't come without mistakes. Every great person, every successful person I've ever met has massive failures. And those are the things that they point to going, mm-hmm. Oh, look at what I overcame. Mm-hmm. Rather than, oh, geez, I never want to talk about that. Like the most successful people I've ever met are the ones that point directly towards the failures of their lives and talk about them and revere them, because those are the moments where you get to adjust. Yep. That didn't work. So how am I going to either fix what I just did wrong so that I can continue on that path, or maybe that's not for me. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way life is. It's just like a bunch of decisions and you're going to make mistakes. the way you think about them. It's not about the mistake, actually. It's about how you respond to them. Like, that is what life is about. It doesn't matter if you are perfect. In fact, nobody's perfect. So, get over yourself.
If you want to see that, go look on YouTube. Sorry, I'm making fun of you, but go look.
She's making fun of me. Awesome.
Go look at YouTube when you were on Stephen Colbert's show. Remember that? You were trying to kick goals.
Yeah, that was embarrassing. Thank you for this.
You're welcome.
This is humble pie right here.
No, it's actually really important, not to cut you down, but actually to recognize, it's a bad example, but like one of my complaints with Instagram and Twitter and all of this is like, and Facebook, is like people only post the perfect stuff, right? They only post the picture where their face looks good. They look like, that's not life. Like that. I think it's like important for us to remember that we're seeing that very skewed. I was thinking about, so Gallup, I know we always think of Gallup as like a survey company, but they did a study a long time, 10 years ago maybe now, where they actually went and interviewed 10,000 C-suite people, so CFOs, CEOs, COOs, and they interviewed them in depth to sort of understand their whole career. And by creating this huge data set, in essence, of understanding all of the moments that these very successful business people had, they basically found the 6 or 7, I think it was, common experiences that they had had. And so basically it was like, if you want to prescribe, or if you want to sort of guess if any one person is likely to, end up in the C-suite, have they had those 6 or 7 things? And you know what one of the 7 was?
What?
Failure to the point that you are afraid of being fired. That was exactly how it was phrased. And it really struck me because failure to the point where you are afraid of being fired is like, that is a big screw up, right? That is a big failure. And it really sort of made me think, wow, do I actually try big enough, right? Like if I want to be in the C-suite, then I guess I need to sort of challenge myself to think bigger. So now you didn't see the questions that we prepared. You and I decided that you wouldn't see them. So if you want to take a pass at this one, it's fine. But if failure is fuel, as we're talking about, if failure is actually part of what helps you grow, what for you has been one of those huge failure moments, and how did you use that as fuel?
Well, I've got a lot of failures, but I think specifically maybe you're hinting at the one that happened after I retired, and I actually got a DUI in 2016. And, I'm actually super comfortable and proud to talk about it now because I've been 3 years sober. And, I actually should star in an Uber ad because of this.
Okay.
Come to think of it.
No. We can arrange that for next week. No problem.
But I think that we had just won the World Cup, and I was irresponsible and made a terrible decision. And at the time, I just remember thinking, well, there that goes. My whole life is over. I'm never going to be able to go and do whatever I thought I would be able to do in my retirement. People won't trust me. And I think generally you're allowed to have one major screw up in the public world that I live in. And so I quit drinking. And in fact, that was the most important thing that ever happened to me because, I was shamed deeply. I was humiliated. And I deserved all of that because I made a terrible decision. And I think that at the end of the day, had that not have happened, I don't know if I'm alive right now.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, had that not have happened, I don't think that I meet my wife who also lives a sober life. I don't think that I get a chance at having these 3 children that we're raising now. And I'm so proud of the fact of the way that I responded to it. Mm-hmm. The thing that I thought was the end of my life, the end of my career, actually, in fact, became the thing that allowed me to operate more wholly and more truthfully in my life as a sober person now. Yeah. And so, everybody is going to experience some sort of failure. I don't care who you are. It just depends on how you respond to it. And also, one of the things that I've learned the most from the women who came before me, have you guys ever heard of Mia Hamm? We always talked about our strengths and our weaknesses as a team. And I don't think that that's something that businesses and teams focus enough attention on. And I remember early on in our career, I was like, oh, well, I'm not the fastest player here. And she quickly shut that up in me. She's like, hold on a second, don't say that. She's like, your weaknesses are important here because where your weaknesses lie is where my strengths overlap.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have to have weaknesses. Otherwise, my strengths wouldn't be my strengths. Yeah. Otherwise, my strengths wouldn't be seen. And I think that that is so undervalued. Having the conversations with the people around you about what your strengths and what your weaknesses are, so that you can find unique and creative ways to figure out how to overlap your strengths. And strength on top of strength is priceless. And creating that environment where you feel comfortable enough to say, yeah, that's not something that that's not going to be my thing. But, I think that might be where you can step in here. And then that creates a bond that's truly unbreakable. It just very much goes into the team mentality of knowing that when you're operating on and working towards a higher purpose, a bigger picture, a better future, you have to use each other and operate with those intentions in mind.
It's so powerful what you just said. I want to make sure we don't miss it, which is we oftentimes, we're just going through mid-year performance reviews.
Oh, those are fun.
Oh.
At least you didn't have to do the daily performance reviews. I got daily feedback every single day from my coach, like, you were terrible today. Or you were actually the best, you were the best out there today, every single day. So keep going, sorry.
I would almost prefer that. So we're going through this big performance review, and often, and no matter where you are in any company, it's like, what are the person's strengths and what are their weaknesses? And then I know many of us, when we get our reviews, we like, yeah, I know it's right. And you go straight to the weaknesses section.
Stupid.
And yes, that is, and I know this is why I want to say this, because Abby just said something that I learned the hard way, which, like, let's all learn from this. Ignoring your strength, not ignoring, but not actually spending time and deeply understanding what are my strengths, what am I naturally good at, and how do I lean even more into those? Well,
all the science proves that the more time you spend on your strengths, the better. You're going to only get like very small percentage points better at your weaknesses. So not focus on them, but you're going to be able to make much bigger gains focusing solely on your strengths.
Yeah.
And then also, for me, the way that I kind of like to conceptualize this is to talk about your weaknesses helps other people be able to work on their strengths so that they can overlap them at the same time. So it's statistics, true. It's science, right?
It's so true, right? We look up, like, for example, at our company, Dara is an amazing, amazing person. His story is amazing. The way he leads is amazing. He's built incredible followership. But it is not him by himself summiting that mountain, right? He has surrounded himself and built a leadership team the same way that you've surrounded yourself with your Wolfpack. And I'm surrounded, right, by people who let me be the best version of myself, right? My mother, by the way, I know she called when we were talking, like, I wanted to make sure she's picking up my son from camp to take him to piano lessons so I can be here doing, like, there's a whole community that surrounds us because she's great at that stuff and I suck at that. I'm like, hurry up, I want to go home. So I want to ask you a question about companies, because when I was reading this book, and this was like a really touching, wonderful moment for me, very validating that I'm really happy with the company that I work at, is so at Uber we have 8 what we call cultural norms. They're sort of our belief statements.
Your values.
That's how we want to operate, exactly. And so when I was reading the failure section, which for me was one of the ones that touched me the most, it reminded me of one of Uber's cultural values, which is just basically the idea that we persevere. This is a company that's working on very, very difficult problems, right? We are trying to go into uncharted territory and do things like, deliver your dinner inside of a drone to your house. Like, I don't know who to copy. Like, we have to figure out how to do that, right? We are figuring out all these new difficult problems.
You're pioneering innovation, for sure.
We don't know. And the idea here is that we just want to really remind ourselves that our secret weapon is our collective grit. Grit is a really powerful thing, but it's
Angela Duckworth wrote a really good book on that.
Yes, you should all. She has an amazing TED Talk on this. Both of us highly recommend you watch it. But this idea that, grit and resiliency is part of who we are. And that's just sort of one example of our cultural values. And so it made me feel good. What I mean by that, working at Uber, that I saw so much connection between the new rules that you aspire for our communities and our cultures to bring and what this company is trying to do. And so I just wonder if you can share a little bit about how you see companies like Uber contributing to or being a catalyst or helping to bring the change that you're really imagining is possible in this book.
Well, I think that because the women's national team and my experience having played with our team for so many years and watching the women win last Sunday, I think it's really important to understand that if you have a relentless pursuit of excellence, then being a pioneer, right, being an innovator is just part of your DNA. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people were talking about this World Cup, you know, how the women's national, their U.S. team, you know, we live in a creative and in a pressure-filled environment. Mm-hmm. That's our every single daily feel, where some of these other teams, you know, they'll only feel it when they get to the big show, when they get to the final or they get to the semi. But our national team, you know, I mean, literally a silly practice, a training session that means nothing. It's a 5v5 tournament, and we are fighting tooth and nail to the death. Yeah. And we're, you know, swearing and calling each other names and you're cheating, the ball was out, whatever it is that because we take so much pride in winning. And, you know, when you get a chance to win that 5v5 tournament, you usually will have like one tournament every week. You know, you're like walking taller, mm-hmm. and you gain respect, even though it's not easy to earn respect from somebody who you just kicked their ass. Like, it's like, okay, they won that, like they deserve it, you know? So it's like, you have to figure out as a company, regardless of how difficult the problems are that you're trying to solve, like, if that's just your DNA, like, I want to welcome all of that challenge and all of that need for creativity. Like, that is how I live my every single day life. If I'm not doing something that isn't challenging me, I'm bored as you know what. Mm-hmm. And I think that in order to create that culture, it obviously starts from the top. Your leadership has to have that mentality. They have to show up happy, excited, and, you know, be pushing all of the people at Uber, the 28,000 folks that work here, to keep trying, to keep pushing, because you never know what you can do until you do it. Yeah. You're a women's national team. You never know, even though we know that we're fighting for this gold medal or the world championship, whatever it is, you never know how it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And the fact will always remain is that you have to believe that something is true before it is. Right. You have to like believe it into existence. Yeah. And I know that's super woo-woo, but we're in San Francisco, so it's okay, right? You know,
it's okay everywhere.
I mean, I bought a nitro cold brew, and it was $9. I was like, I am in
now
San
you're
Francisco.
In San Francisco. Yeah.
Yes, it was like literally this much liquid for $9. I was like, okay. But I don't know. I think that it's not easy creating a culture of dreamers, of people who are buying into something bigger. I mean, you know, I think back 10 years ago. I don't know how old Uber is, but I think back to 10 years ago, and how difficult it was for me to have to call a taxi. You know, you have to actually physically call the taxi. And what Uber has essentially done is changed the way people live and operate. Right. And in order for Uber to stay relevant and innovative, is that you have to continually push that boundary of always wanting to try to change the existence of the way people live and operate. And though it might not necessarily be moving human beings, maybe it's moving food or whatever. Yep. Like, that still has to be the essential ingredient of what creates and makes up Uber, and like why you get out of bed, because you essentially want to make people's lives better and run more efficiently so that they can spend more time at home or spend more time with their kids, or, you know, like maybe you should Uber to pick up your kid from camp. I don't know.
I should just pick up my kid from camp.
Although we were saying should, don't all over yourself.
Thank you. Yeah. I was telling Abby, I was telling somebody, like, should is a really powerful word because it's filled with judgment, but that's another topic for another day. I will tell you something, and I want to show you a picture in a second, but I don't want to pick up my kid from camp.
Cool.
And I don't think that makes me a bad mom.
No.
I have an amazing partner in life, my husband, who doesn't mind doing that and enjoys it. You know, they enjoy their sort of boy time in the car on the way home, and that gives me the space to get to do this. And so that is like my family unit in many ways is sort of a wolf pack, right? And then we get to stand up for each other, and his strength is dealing with my son, and mine is not always that, depending on the day. But I'm not a bad mom, I swear. Not selling myself very well, but
No, I don't think so.
You know what I'm
but
trying
here's
to
the thing,
say?
there's a double standard. Like there is this archetype.
I know.
An archetype of what a mother should
be doing. I know.
And she should be the one that picks
wants
up
to
the,
pick up,
you know,
yeah.
like on average, women are spending 20 to 40 minutes still, even a working woman, on all the chores at home.
Yep.
Even though they have the same income, same jobs. And I think that we have to praise you and your husband for knowing your strengths and knowing, because this, you know, we can talk all day long about leadership techniques. They work in every aspect of our life. It's not just a business.
Yeah, so
it's like actually most important to get your home life in order, and the leadership structure on, you know, you and your husband on the same page. So I appreciate this story so much, because I think that women should be able to go to work and spend time at work, and their partner can have an opportunity to go pick up the kids from school, and then maybe next week you do it, right? Or whatever it is. Like, I just
in charge of dinner.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of stereotypes.
Yeah, putting it that way. I saw something very recently. Can we put that photo up? I hope it's here. We'll see. Yeah. I don't know if folks saw this. This is from a Vanity Fair article. I saw it. You seen this?
I have, yeah.
Like, I saw this and I thought, oh, the future's here. So like, this is, it was an article about the women, and this is some of the women running for president. And what I loved about this photo, and I just wanted to get your reaction to it since, you know, we were chatting, is like, these are women who are actually competing against each other in some way, right? Not only one president at a time, but they are together, right? They are a wolf pack. They are supporting each other. Mm-hmm. They are creating space for each other. Yeah. And I just thought like, oh, this makes me optimistic, because some days it's hard to feel optimistic. So.
Totally. I mean, I think that this picture's lovely, right? There's a lot to aspire to, right? I also think, I mean, and I'll just be like super honest, like when our current sitting president and Hillary were running last go around, you know, Hillary, people just didn't think she was likable, right? Like that was the thing, like she's not likable. And I think that we have to, if we really actually want real equality, like if you think that human beings deserve the equal, same treatment from person to person, then we have to really deep dive into what you feel like deeply when you look at a picture like this, you know? And then when you see them out on the campaign trail or on your Twitter feed or whatever, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, but like, maybe if you're a Democrat, like, shouldn't we just go with the guys? Because at least we want to get the Democrat in the White House. Like, we have to constantly be checking ourselves for our own bias and find the candidate who you think has the policy that you want to get behind. You know, and I don't know yet. I don't know who I'm going to back for this next election, for the next run. But I think that this picture is something that we can aspire to. You know, it's a beautiful picture and it's a beautiful idea. And I'm also aware of the fact that they're going to be probably crushing each other over the next however many months until 2020.
But that should be celebrated too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of people were talking about the Women's World Cup and how, wow, like there's so much attention and analyzing all of their every move. And I'm like, yeah, do you know what that's called? That's called sports. Right? Like think about all the analyzing of the draft, of like the NFL and the NBA draft, like the amount of time that is spent on analyzing, you know, all of this stuff. Like if you want to be treated like a man, then you need to actually take all of the stuff that these guys, these professional athletes have been dealing with. So, and I think that our women's national team is like, yeah, bring it on. Like this is exactly what we're in this for. This is what we want.
Yeah.
We want, because guess what? That also, it's an accountability. It's part of the accountability chain. Like, oh, okay, people are watching. I have to always like maintain this success or just even the level of play.
So we're about to run out of time, and I want to ask you a question. Oh, I take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I like talking, although I've been going through hot flashes up here. Like,
Why?
I am like straight sweat. I don't know. I mean, the lights.
Am I making you nervous?
No, I don't get nervous very much. I don't feel nervous, but is it hot in here? Holy.
It's because the room is filled
Everybody stop
to
breathing.
capacity with people that want to hear from you. So my last question for you is a bit of a selfish one, but it's on behalf of all women that today find themselves in position of power. And there's many different forms of power, of course, but somebody from my Wolfpack said, ask Abby this. What advice do you have for women in positions of power and influence today so they don't inadvertently continue steering women towards operating under the old rules? Yeah, so good. It's like Shirley Chisholm said, if there aren't enough seats at the table, bring folding chairs. I believe deeply, and this is really important in order to not perpetuate the systems that aren't set up for women to succeed, is that if you do find yourself in rooms or at tables where decisions are made, or at tables or in rooms where power is, you have to use your voice. Even if it feels, because at first it's going to feel, I think, a little bit like you're going against yourself, like you're shooting your own self in the foot. Like, if I speak up for this woman, then I'm going to lose out here. Maybe I'll get pushed out. Maybe I don't get the job. Maybe I don't get the project, whatever it is. I don't get the raise. But if we don't do it now, it will never freaking happen. Yeah. We have to fight for each other. This is no longer a competition against each other. And also, if you are in a room of power and you happen to be a man, think about the perspective of women before decisions are made. Think about, have we uncovered and gone and turned this over in every perspective? Do we have enough voices in this room? Because, essentially you guys are, and your product that you have is affecting every kind of person. And if the decisions that are being made from top to bottom aren't being made by both men and women, by people of color, by any marginalized human being, then the product that you send out into the world is going to be skewed. I don't care how many computers or AI you stick to this or algorithms you create. It is still going to be skewed because not everybody has a voice. So bringing voice to the voiceless, making sure that every marginalized person is spoken for and accounted for. And I have to be honest, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. You're going to be scared. You're going to probably sweat. People might not appreciate it. Your bosses might be like, oh, don't be the token one. Well, until a token one starts to get flack, my wife always says, like, if I'm actually not making people leave, because she does a lot of speaking and she speaks in a lot of churches, she kind of speaks out against some of the misogyny and racism and stuff that runs rampant through the institutions of religion. She's like, if somebody isn't actually walking out, then I'm not pushing the limits. I'm not pushing the boundaries. And that's kind of the philosophy that I take. I think that I'm charismatic and approachable, but like, if you actually don't push the boundary, then no progress is ever going to get made. And then you will be on that stage with Kobe and Payton next to you, and you're going to think, shit, I didn't do enough. Right. Yeah. Somebody, I can't remember who said this to me or I read, but that failure only happens once you stop trying. And I feel like that's part of the message that you're sharing with all of us, which is, as we find that truth, as we really start to embrace what you are describing, what you imagine the future should be, and how we want to be different, that we have to begin that difficult work altogether of doing that.
Yeah. You got to figure out who you are. And I think that, as a company, I think that Uber does an amazing job at being out there. But if you don't know who you are as a company, then you don't know what non-negotiables and standards and values that you need to maintain and hold, so that you never get too far off course. Because boundaries, right, are important, but the boundaries in our lives are supposed to grow us rather than limit us. And I think that that's confusing. People, I always laugh when people have multiple children and they're like, I just don't know if I'm going to love this next baby as much as I love this one. They're first.
Wow.
And the deal is like, we actually can grow.
Yeah.
Our capacity to love gets bigger.
Yeah.
And though you have favorites during certain periods of their lives, the love for them is always the same.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So on that note, Abby, thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you. Yeah.
I really hope that each of us connected deeply with something that you said. I think this is a great use of time when all of us leave this room with some nugget in there that's really changing the way we think and an idea of how tomorrow we're going to behave a little bit different.
Even if it didn't connect with you deeply, even if it was surface level, great.
That works too. On a personal note, I just want to say I am so grateful that this is where your passion lies, because I fundamentally believe what you're doing is on a mission to really help change the world. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you for having me.